Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee. Can I draw everybody's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit. Those at home don't need to leave their home. And make your way to the assembly point located in the market car park, adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by council staff. For the benefit of those watching from home and those in the public gallery, members of the committee are seated in the front row, and all non-members of the committee in attendance are seated in the rows behind. Thank you. Before we move on to item 1, as Chair, I want to encourage constructive debate. To help with that, I will allow members to speak more than once during an item, where it helps move the discussion forward, provided comments are relevant and do not simply repeat points that have already been made. If the debate starts to become repetitive or strays from the item before us, I will intervene and move us on so that we can conduct our business efficiently. I hope we have a productive and enjoyable series of meetings. With that, we will move on to apologies of absence, item 1. Apologies received from Councillor O'Leary, and the substitute member is Mr. Councillor James Newport. Item 2, the minutes of the Standards Subcommittee meeting held on the 9th of March and the Audit and Governance Committee meeting held on the 18th of March. As this is the first meeting of the merged committee, the minutes include those from the last Audit and Governance Committee meeting and separately the last Standards and Subcommittee meeting. Members, are the minutes agreed? Agreed? Yep, okay, I'll sign those later. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest, members? No, okay. Item 4, public questions on notice. No public questions have been received. Item 5, Rochford District Council Provisional Audit Planning Report, year ending 31st of March 2026. The external auditor will now present to the committee with oversight of the plan for the external audit of the 25-26 Statement of Accounts.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name's Elizabeth Jackson, and I'm the partner from Ernst & Young, who's responsible for delivering the external audit of Rochford District Council. So if I take you through, I agree with this Chair, a high-level summary of the exec summary, and then obviously welcome to answer any questions that you have. So I've been with the council now for 3 years, carrying out your external audit. And our audit plans look very similar to that in previous years, and I'll take you through kind of the key areas that there are. So the first area is around the rebuild of assurance, and for those who are new to the committee, there's obviously a new terminology for you. There has been, and I'm sure finance kind of explained already, but there has been a slightly odd arrangement in local government accounting for the last few years around where some of the audits got delayed and there was a backlog in audits being carried out and accounts being produced. MHCLG set out a plan for rebuild or the reset and recovery of the market to ensure that everyone got back on kind of a fair playing field, that then councils that needed additional support and were then called out for that basis, and those then that we could move back to those unqualified audit opinions. The rebuild assurance is around that. What we've recommended for Rochford for 25-26 is that we're going to carry out your normal audit of your financial statements that are on the agenda later on, ensure that we complete all of those areas of testing, and then move to doing a formal rebuild of those balances that have been unaudited in 26-27. And that's purely to ensure that where we didn't complete all audit work last year because of some information, particularly around property, plant and equipment, so the fixed assets, the assets that you have as a council, we want to ensure that we focus on that area this year, provide all that assurance, and therefore we've got a good base to actually move forward for the next year. Moving on, we said for the preparedness for the audit that we conclude that council was well prepared for the audit last year, and there were some small areas of improvement around that PPE working with the valuer and preparation of those working papers, which we've been liaising with finance over the last year to ensure that's placed, and that I've been ensured that the council is set up in a good way to ready for the audit commencing later on this year, which we're due to start in October and carry out October-November 2026. The timeline of the audit I've just covered. We remain independent as a body, that we have to carry out independence checks and procedures to ensure that I'm able to be your external auditor, and those have all been provided. The risk areas, we have 4 risks arising in relation to your financial statements. 2 of them relate to fraud, and for those new members on the committee, that I'm not saying that there is fraud at the council. I'm saying that under the international standards of auditing, which all external audits are carried out at, regardless whether it's public sector, corporate, the third sector, these 2 risks are presumed to be in all organisations of any type, and therefore we say that they are fraud risks for you as a council, and we carry out enhanced audit procedures to ensure that we can mitigate against those risks. So I'm not saying that management does manipulate the financial statements or does manipulate your balances. It's just that we have to carry out additional checks and balances to ensure that I'm satisfied that they are okay. And the other 2 risks we have, we call inherent risks. And that means there's a risk of material misstatement. So we set a materiality level for your audit, and I give an opinion based on that materiality level. The 2 risks are in line with all kind of public sector, local government bodies. They are the valuation of your property, plant and equipment, so your assets, and the valuation of your pension fund. And they are due to them being highly estimated balances. You have specialists in a valuer and with an actuary to prepare both of those figures in your financial statements, and therefore I'm required to undertake additional procedures around those balances to ensure that the complex areas are fully audited. Materiality is set on your draft financial statements, and these levels are sat here. You have 2% planning materiality level, and that's because you have a good control environment as a council, and therefore I can set the materiality at the highest level. I have a benchmark between 0.5% of your gross revenue spend and 2%. Because of the way you've produced your accounts in previous years, I'm satisfied that I can have that at that higher level, because the control environment is here for you to prepare, that I don't believe there is error in those accounts as the preparation happens. And then I've just set out our risk assessment around the value for money work. So I have kind of a 2-pronged attach. I audit your financial statements at the next agenda item, but I also have responsibility over ensuring that you're delivering value for money. And that I focus on, and I'll talk about it at the next committee when I bring my full report. That we look at the arrangements in place that the council has around ensuring you're financially sustainable, ensuring you have robust governance arrangements, and ensuring that you're spending your money in an economic and efficient and effective way. So we look at lots of areas around that. We look at some of the decisions made by the council, how you're doing it, the governance processes and committees like we are in today, and how that then plays out, how you set budgets and bits like that. We haven't identified any risks in respect of 25-26 financial year to date. Obviously, that is kept up to date as we go through the audit, obviously up to the end of November, and therefore if there's anything that does arise in anything that the council does between now and the end of November, we'll bring that back to this committee. And then I'll probably just pause there, Chair, and if there are any risks.
So I turn the mic on. Do members have any questions on this item? Councillor Hoy, do you speak Councillor Newport by a fraction of a second?
Thank you. I've just got a few questions, well, 3. I'll read them all out. They're sort of linked as well to some extent. So the first is, you've highlighted in the report problems around property valuations and historic assurance. Are there any actions that officers have taken since the last audit to ensure that these issues will not delay this year's audit? And also there are some issues around the provision of working papers and finance staff availability. Are officers confident sufficient resources are now in place to meet the audit timetable, and how can we, or how is this managed, and how can we as the audit committee see that in a timely fashion? And I think the third question is probably, to my mind, more fundamental, is we're unlikely to rebuild assurances over the historic balances during this audit cycle. What's the realistic timetable for Rochford returning to a completely clean audit position? And how will this impact on LGR if we're going to be forming a new unitary and we don't know our figures? And presumably many other councils won't know that either. And how can is that going to be a separate audit report in itself to the audit committee?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If I answer question 3, Chair, and I'll probably hand to Sam to answer the 1 and 2, because I think that was more around the officer's response to preparedness. So for 3, it will take 3 years to unwind when you get a full audited position. So this year we're aiming to do a full audited position, so then every balance is we call it green in your report. And then from that position, we then will have, that will be your baseline audit year. You then have 2 more years where obviously your comparatives aren't fully audited, and then the comparatives of the comparatives, obviously your opening balance sheet, the 1st of April as a starting point. So therefore it takes 3 years. So that rebuild will start in 26-27, and therefore I can say here tonight quite knowingly, we won't rebuild before the Essex LGR occurs and you go into whatever new kind of state council you're going to be in. That we're currently working through with MHCLG, and we have done rebuild risk assessments for every council. We're just completing them this week, and they will go to MHCLG, and then they will come back to us. And we've said that if they want to steer of focusing on bodies, say within the LGR, that they want to get unqualified quicker, then we could reprioritise and turn our attentions to those bodies. So as it stands currently, you'll move into LGR as a disclaimed audit report, and you won't be a clean audit opinion.
Sam?
Thanks, Chair. So just in relation to question 1, obviously we've already been through one audit now. Is that better? Yes. Yeah, okay. So obviously last year we went through a rigorous audit, so we're better prepared this year. One of the steps we've taken in that is obviously with our valuation partner, as Wilk said, Eve, we've managed to get all our assets revaluations. We've had reconciliations on our fixed asset register, and we've ensured there's been further checks between the fixed asset register and what's on our balance sheet. Question 2, would you mind repeating that? Because I missed it as a question 1. Apologies.
Yeah, this is an issue around the provision of working papers, so the information that we as a council are giving to the external auditors in a timely fashion. I got from the report that was a problem. I know it's been a problem in previous years as well, in that it's not a deliberate, we're not going to give you the papers, it's an overwork. You've got a lot of work to do and you're struggling to meet the deadlines and provide the working papers as I understand it, and because it's about resourcing as well, about if we have sufficient resources to provide that in the fashion that our external auditors want those papers, working papers.
I can say some of the deadlines that are very challenging, but I think we've improved our communication between Rochford and EY. So as of now, I know a lot of the requests are already on the portal to be prepared. I think there's about 150 requests, and last I checked, there's about 60 that have already been uploaded. So by October, I'm fully confident that all of them will be uploaded for EY to review.
Okay, Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chair. This question for Sam, I think. On page 27, the preparedness for audit. So there was three improvements required for audit. So are any of those now fixed and not in progress? Page 27, Sam. On the sorry, it might be different on yours, but in this one it's 27.
Yeah, so I think that was quite linked to question 2 before from Councillor Hoy. So as we're going through now, in terms of the portal we've got from EY, the requests are already uploaded, so we're already working through them, and I'm confident we'll have them uploaded by October for the audit to start.
Yeah, so that was on the working papers, was it? And what about the availability of the key finance personnel? Did you ask that?
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'll try and talk louder. Oh, sorry.
If it's the same question, it's no sense. Any other questions, members? Okay, this report is to be noted. So is that noted, members? Yes, noted, thank you. Right, item 6, statement of accounts. The report begins on page 63. Sam and Elizabeth, I'm going to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. That's going to be me. So Rochford published their 25-26 accounts before the statutory deadline of the 30th of June 2026. The Council are currently in the statutory public inspection period for 25-26 accounts, which concludes on the 11th of August. The Council will then go through an external audit process, which Liz just detailed. Deadline for the publication of the full set of audited accounts is the 31st of January 2027. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions, members? Councillor Hoy.
Right, so it's item 6, yes. There's 3 questions again. So we underspent by over 1.3 million in the revenue account, and we underspent by more than 1.3 million on the capital expenditure, slipped, if you like. I'm just concerned that this is just demonstrating that our inability as a council to deliver projects, really, rather than just a slippage, which it's described as. I think historically my concern is that we do fail to deliver projects as we believe we're going to. And I just wonder if this is a fundamental problem or if it is a slippage and everything is on track, but it just is a timing difference, if you like. So that's the first concern.
Sam, do you want all 3 questions or do you want one at a time? One at a time, is that okay?
So sometimes that underspends between capital and revenue are linked. So it is quite common for capital to obviously, for there to be slippage. In terms of like the capital in terms of the outturn report, which I think is going on Tuesday to the Strategy and Finance Committee, that will be detailed a lot more in that report. Yeah, sorry, I haven't. I can take that question away and look to find a more full answer for you.
Okay, Councillor West, question 2.
Question 2, and I'll come back on question 1 in a minute. Around £800,000 of our improved revenue position came from 2 items, I think it was, planning fees and interest income. How resilient is our budget if that doesn't happen? Because obviously it was a one-off. We're depending on planning fees coming in and interest rates staying high for £800,000 of additional income. That's the issue on item 2. So I want some assurances around that. Thank you.
Sam?
Well, we underspent by 1.2 million. So even if we didn't have any of that income, we would still be able to have a balanced budget. And also, with interest rates, we are expecting them to be dropped. So that is built into our mid-term financial strategy.
Okay. And question 3.
I have got another question, but I had 3 questions, but the third question's been answered in the...
Okay, you wanted to come back on question 1, didn't you?
I think I've been given assurances on question 1, but no doubt I'll raise it again at future meetings if I need to.
I think the one is the strategy and finance next week. That'll be coming in more detail. Councillor Milne.
Would it be fair to say that a recurring problem with Rochford has in fact been retention and recruitment of suitable staff, which has inhibited us paying the full amount that we've budgeted for salaries, and at the same time affects us in that we may not get delivery in time because of various specialists we can't get, or we have to pay more for them, or we may, in another account, be looking at the amount of money we're having to pay for experts to be brought in if we needed them, that kind of thing. So that is still an ongoing issue and accounts for a lot of this underspend. Is that still the case?
Sam?
You are correct, yeah. We still have a significant underspend with staffing costs.
I do believe that it's one of the reasons we went to one team was to make the council bigger and more interesting to get better staff. That was one of the moves we made. That was one of the reasons, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but it seems to be still ongoing even despite that.
Yeah, it is ongoing. Yes, I do agree. Thank you. Any other questions, members? No, I do. This report is for noting as well. Is that noted, members? Noted. Thank you. Right. Item 7, the internal audit update. This report begins on page 169. Aaron Winter from BDO will introduce his item. Aaron, over to you. Oh, that side. You was over there earlier.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conscious of the number of papers, so I will take each one in turn, because actually the first report that starts on 173 of the pack is our progress report. And effectively, this is just covering the completion of the internal audit plan for 25-26. And it just firms up that the 6 reports that we're bringing tonight are in final, and obviously I'll cover those shortly. There is one piece of work that is remaining ongoing, and it's just closing into a reporting stage now, which relates to an additional request that come at the end of last year from the Vice Chair, actually, in terms of supplier spend and doing some analytical works and reviewing some of the root causes around spend, etc. As that's an advisory review, it won't have an audit opinion, so therefore it doesn't impair our ability to bring the annual report, which is obviously later on the agenda as well. So we will bring that report to a future committee meeting, actually the next committee meeting, and the outcomes of that. What I would say is that most committee meetings don't usually have as many reports in final as tonight. Those that were on the committee prior will recall that we went through a tendering exercise and were appointed early in the financial year 25-26, so we didn't actually get the plan approved until the end of June, beginning of July, so we lost a quarter of work. So that does mean we've been a bit backlogged, but this does conclude that. And what I wanted to give you some assurances is that we've already commenced the 26-27 plan following the approval back in March. So the future meetings and committees will have a much more spread out reporting. The remainder of the report, as I covered in the previous training session, covers our KPIs, and there is a sea of green there in terms of the responsiveness of management and our delivery of the plan. But we do highlight any concerns about lack of engagement, etc., or challenges through that reporting. So I will always, when I present the progress report, ensure that I allude to how we're performing from both sides. So that was all I was going to say on the progress report, and then I can move on to the follow-up report if there's no questions on that one.
Any questions? Councillor Hoy.
Can I ask my questions at the end? Because I think I've sort of grouped them all together, and I didn't, because I did this earlier in the week. I
Okay, that's
haven't
fine.
referenced it to which part of the report they relate to necessarily.
Okay, that's fine. You carry on.
So the next report is Appendix 2 or page 183 in the pack, and this is our periodic report on the follow-up of internal audit recommendations. So what I would say is that when we raise recommendations, we have a programme where we follow up all high and medium rated recommendations. As I just mentioned there, we become the internal auditors of the council at the beginning of the last financial year, so 25-26. So we actually inherited nearly 40 recommendations from Basildon at that point. What this report then tells us is that we've nearly cleared all of those legacy report recommendations. So as at the update today, you will see there that we've completed or closed 11 of them. I say we completed, I shouldn't say that. Management have completed the actions and provided the sufficient evidence that we've then reviewed to close those for 11 recommendations. Which were the long-standing 23-24 ones as well, which was good to see those closed down. We now have 4 that are only overdue, which is a number that has come down over the year. And you will see there are updates from management with timescales that they have in place to then conclude those over the coming months. So that then brings us up to speed that actually the bulk of what we've got are not yet due for follow-up and it's got implementation dates for the future. So we are seeing timelier completion of the recommendations as a result and that ongoing engagement. So that was all I was going to say on that report, but obviously happy to take any questions.
Any separate questions on this report other than Councillor Hoy's? No, carry on.
So we're going to get into some of the meatier reports now. So what we do for the committee is we do provide the full report that we produce for each internal audit review, so you can see the context of the scope that we've completed, the outcomes, what works well and what needs to improve. And obviously then recommendations form into our annual report and also the recommendation follow-up. So the first report we've got from page 197 is the health and safety report. So the purpose of this audit was to provide assurance over the design and operational effectiveness of the controls in relation to the health and safety policies and practices across the council. So I would be minded to remind members that we are not health and safety technical experts, but what we are doing here is reviewing what the council have got in place in relation to the controls and governance to adhere to those laws and regulations. So we're not reporting here that the council isn't complying with those regs, but obviously with the opinion that we've demonstrated here of a limited over the design and operational effectiveness, we have raised some significant findings, 2 high risk and 3 medium risk recommendations that do need to be addressed, obviously to ensure that there are fundamental components to help safeguard staff, visitors and the properties that the organisation manages. What we have done, and you'll see in the report, is there's quite a robust management response there in terms of piloting and rolling out some systems to support that. And actually that was the underlying root cause there, that some of those fundamental systems weren't fit for purpose to ensure that the relevant information was captured, the policies were obviously monitored and kind of up to date, ensuring training and the compliance with that training being completed on a timely basis to ensure that staff are kind of equipped with the ability to manage health and safety risks. So we've obviously put in place future recommendations there for the council to take on board, and we will follow those up. So again, I'm happy to take any questions on the report, but obviously if there's anything specific to management, I'd have to take that away and direct it to the relevant person.
Councillor Ince?
Sorry. Yeah, you touched on safety. Have you got a timescale for that? That was mentioned in that report. Have you got a timescale for the safety issue related in the report? Yeah, it says. My phone's gone off. Apologies. Come back to life. I can't see it. Timescale lifting. I can't see nothing like this. Apologies, I'll be there in a second.
Do you mean like a timeline on the remedial works?
Came back, sorry. The health and safety come back at limited insurances with 5 recommendations. What's the plan and the timescale to lift that to at least moderate, giving touches on both staff health and safety?
Which page is that on?
Pardon?
Which page?
It's in the report. Apologies, I'll come back to you with a page number.
Okay.
I can answer in general in
Oh,
terms of what we've got in the report here is obviously those findings that we've raised. So from the page 204 of the pack, each finding has a detailed recommendation, action plan, and then a due date that management have put in place for us to monitor against. So just to remind the committee, it is management's responsibility to implement that action. What we won't do is re-audit this whole area. We will follow up to ensure that those recommendations are implemented to give you assurance that therefore the control environment will be stronger. But obviously health and safety is a common area that's reviewed on an ongoing basis. So I'd expect us to be looking at those sort of components on a future audit plan as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions on this report? report? No? You'd like to move on?
The next report, which starts on page 225 of the pack, or Appendix 4, is the internal audit review of the medium-term financial strategy report. So the purpose of this was obviously to look at and provide assurance over the processes that Council obviously put in place to prepare, monitor and report on a robust MTFS. And what we also did is take into account the SITFA guidance and best practice to compare how the council were performing or whether the council had done their own self-assessment. So you will see in there that they had in the report. The opinion of moderate across both design and operational effectiveness controls was predominantly driven by the two medium findings. The first one is about documented methodology. So what we're not saying here is that the MTFS isn't pulled together on a timely basis. There's no process that occurs. There's a lot that happens, but what there isn't is that central record of actually all of those components and how it is built and then put together. And this is a pretty common finding that we've identified across our organisations, because it's often reliant on people in the finance team who've got years of knowledge of doing it, and it evolves over time. But what we're doing at the moment is obviously taking that step back with LGR on the horizon to think about actually the organisation needs to document some of these processes to help with that transition and transformation, to ensure that some of that knowledge is passed on, especially if there's differences in approach with the combining councils going forward. So that was one of the key findings. And then the other one we identified was with regard to that SITFA self-assessment. The council had done this, but it's not a regular occurrence. And actually good practice would suggest that should happen on an ongoing basis to ensure that the council are complying with their requirements each year, to embed it into that process. So those were the two core findings, so happy to take any questions.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've gone through all the various appendices on here, and it's pretty consistent with some of the findings that you have got throughout. I take it the main thing, going through all the various appendices, that management will be noting these and we will be able to follow the recommendations that you have put in there. Because I know there's a lot in this pack all the way through, and there's a lot of findings that you've got right the way through all the appendices. So I'm just actually looking through all of them set aside, and I trust that all of those findings will be implemented by management, as those are the things that are lacking that you have found. Yeah?
That is correct. And what we've done with management is really work on what are pragmatic dates, given that obviously you've just touched on in a previous discussion about the resources the council has, the staffing kind of challenges that you have. So we're really working with each service to ensure that what is pragmatic in those timescales, so then we don't have that slippage going forward.
I've got just a quick observation really on the assumptions. You've got inflation set at 2%. You've got the new homes bonus. Since I've been on the council, they've been telling us that's going to disappear. So this is on 227, right, the very first bit of the summary. So how strong are those assumptions you're making, especially on inflation and the new homes bonus going forward?
This would have been a historic review of the MTFS, obviously, that was done for the prior year. So it is a timing issue. And I'm sure management, obviously as part of the MTFS going into this year, would have updated all those assumptions. So I recognise it's historic, but it was based on the data and the MTFS we were auditing at the time.
Maybe a question for David. Yeah. Or Sam, do you want to come in?
In terms of our MTFS, we do update regularly from our Treasury advisors. So we had company use MUFG, so we use their advice on inflation. We build that into the future budgets. Yes, as Aaron said, it is a timing issue for that. So in the next budget, you'll see different inflation figures.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just going to page 257, noticing the recommendation about a supplier setup process and keeping those records and management's response there. saying that, however, evidence retention will be strengthened to improve audit assurance. So are we secure that we have enough evidence to back that up at this moment in time? And then moving on to, obviously we're transitioning to local government, or we may be transitioning to a different council. So there's a piece of work here to do on making sure that is strengthened in having a centralised storage of documentation accessible for the purposes of audit, and then somehow transferring all that information to the new council. So where are we with that? Or we just don't know at the moment what processes are going to be used by a larger council to keep all that information?
Let's come back on that.
Obviously, that would be more of a question for management and probably David to understand where that is. But from our perspective, Councillor, it is ensuring that all of that information, as per our audits, is retained, and the processes you have here is retaining that information so it can be transitioned. Obviously, as an internal auditor, I'm going to be independent to what's happening with regards to the LGR transformation, and that will be managed by management and obviously their counterparts at the different authorities. So it's probably one for David to come back with on where they are with that. But these recommendations are being made for Rochford District Council to improve information, data, documentation, so it is ready to transfer.
Come back, Councillor Booth.
Yes, so I'm not too sure, I may be asking the right person, but the question I want to ask, have we got some national practice yet on moving all this processes to a central sort of hub for the new authorities, or is that something we're still waiting to find out?
Maybe that's something that can be asked at the strategy and finance. It seems more of a strategy. Maybe something they had to ask Jonathan.
Okay, I'll take your advice on that, Chair, thank you. And I'll ask my colleague to ask that next week.
Excellent. Councillor Newport.
Thank you. I'm totally lost on what appendix are we talking to, or can we talk to any of them? Because
I think Councillor Booth jumped ahead a little bit there.
Councillor Ward spoke to all of them. I'm going to say this report is horrible. The presentation, I just find this so cumbersome to deal with. So, but I'm going to speak about Appendix H, which is the cyber security, and I find this extremely worrying.
Which
actually.
page?
Oh well, if you want to page
321.
319 onwards, there's Appendix H. It's the same in yours as it is in mine. Yeah. I just find management response quite lapsed, to be honest. And on some of these, which are high-risk areas, supply chain risks, we've seen that companies like Marks and Spencers who are completely wiped out by supply chain risk. We're dealing with not only our own data, but also our residents' data, high-risk area, and they put an implementation date of 2027. I think this, to be honest, I know it's not really for you to answer, but I don't know how we got to a date of 2027. It doesn't seem to come across with any sense of urgency. This effectively, these risks could bring the council down. We could stop functioning as a council. How do they arrive at is a high risk and that sort of implementation date? Is that being pushed back on?
I think that's, you're going to say it's a management issue, I would expect. This is probably the wrong meeting.
It is. It's a fair challenge, though. There are actions that are occurring in the background as well, and I know some of this relates to procurement, which obviously there is a potential change in the way that is occurring, where some of these changes could come in a lot quicker than that. But that is like the end result to ensure that everything's been done. But I think it's important that management respond to that and what the steps they're taking in the interim to get to that point.
So come back. So how would we address management timeline to make, because it's not all going to be done in 2027. There's going to be implemented stages. So how do we keep track of the stages?
That is down to a project plan, isn't it? We need to see the project plan of the implementation so that we can track that. That's the problem, and we can see where the risk is on that project plan, and where there's slippage in implementing those controls with suppliers, and what we're doing about suppliers that maybe are dragging their heels over securing their own systems. So I think if we could have that back for the next committee meeting, that would provide us some assurance.
Yeah, I think we can put, when we come to the end, we can add that to the, what's the word? Work plan. Yeah, I think that's something to add to the work plan. Do you want to make a note of that, Oksana? Thank you. Councillor Hoyer.
Thank you. I may as well come in now, I think. I haven't got a lot of questions. I'm going to start off with the actual report itself. I've had real problems with the report. And I think everybody in this council must know by now that I'm colourblind. And I can't be the only one, because it's not uncommon. And I'm on page 177. I've got no idea what is going on with these little circles. If they're different colours, the same colours, I've got no idea, and I don't know what they mean. Second page, there's nothing like that. Third page, 179, it's got a G in the middle of a block for all of them, and then the bottom one has got, it may have something in, it may not, I don't know. It just looks like something of the same colour but without a letter in it. Then turning over the page, I've got some down the left-hand side of the page which has got words above it, which is a lot more helpful because it says one substantial, moderate, limited, no. But I wouldn't be able to tell without those against them. So I think we need to do work and have an understanding of how colours may or may not be that straightforward for a lot of people when we're preparing these reports. And it won't just be for this council, it's for the general public as well, if someone is colourblind.
We'll take that on board. Councillor Hoyer.
Sorry, I do raise this quite often.
Yeah, I know.
I just get frustrated that... Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think it does need action. And also, why isn't it under the equality part of the report? I raise it all the time, and it still is not there, that we're not considering our reports against how accessible they are to people who may have different different disabilities.
Councillor Ward, do you want to come?
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I'm sitting here on a MacBook basically because I can't use the council facility because it doesn't allow me to interrogate all the items that you're trying to look at now. I can interrogate all of those because I use an Apple and I can use Adobe. We're not even allowed to use Adobe on the new system, which I'm finding extremely frustrating. And I'm thinking it does not help any member to be able to interrogate these reports properly. Yep, this is the problem. I understand exactly what you're saying. That's why I'm able to interrogate every single item on this report, all the appendices, and see all the recommendations that are in there and all the risks that have been highlighted. Now, my own view is that we should be able to call the responsible officers in regards to all these various risks that have been highlighted, and I would want to know why it's taking so long, how long is it going to take to fix it, and then it may even be a case that we have the chief executive in, because the main man in charge of everything, basically to ask the questions of his own staff as to why some of these things are not coming through on time. I'm looking at lots of stuff that is being left. Keep on going on. It's nonsense. This should not happen at all. And so I'm very critical myself of this situation. And I'm critical of the fact that members can't actually see what I'm seeing and being able to get it. They're having to flick through paper, which is absolutely crazy, because trying to find the items that I can see. So, you know, one of my recommendations is to really look into this seriously. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think that might be maybe another committee that might be formed to deal with a lot of that. Yeah, it might be. Yes. Councillor Milne, I think you want to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. One of the issues I've found is with Microsoft Edge. I've loaded this thing in Microsoft Edge and put in the find tool on the sharing tab. It does go to the page number.
Councillor Milne, can we...
but leaving that aside, this whole issue of was raised before in audit and in scrutiny of having executive summaries of some of these very long reports. I've been wading through this today. You know, I've got to recharge the iPad time I've gone through it all. It's like War and Peace. And I quite sympathise, I said, with Councillor Hoy. You know, although I'm not colourblind, there is this issue. And on other devices, because of all this security and so on, there is this difficulty. And I'm having to literally use it in a browser.
Thank you, Councillor Milne. We'll stick to the report. I have asked the officers and people to give an overall summary of the report as well. Councillor Hoy, you got a few more questions.
Yeah, sorry, I'll sort of try and roll them into one if I can. There are 3 areas of audit that receive limited assurance. There are problems around procurement and contract management, which receive limited assurance because the contract register is incomplete, which I found really worrying. I don't know how. Does that mean we don't know what contracts there are? This seems amazing to me that this is still incomplete. And I remember this coming up a few years ago as well about procurement. And we've got 4 audit recommendations which are overdue. My concern is that they're coming through in these reports. These are issues this year, but there have been issues in previous years as well. I've not been on audit for a couple of years, but so we're talking about 3 or 4 years ago, we had the same issues. We've got the issues coming back. So my problem is that we're getting reoccurring issues which are still coming up in the report. There might be slightly different areas, but procurement and contract management has been there for quite a long time. The audit recommendations are overdue. What I want to know is how we can have assurance by the next meeting that these are being dealt with. Do we have a named officer who's going to be responsible for these, or is it just the general audit department will be responsible? We need to have assurances that we know that someone is going to be responsible for these and making sure these are done. So is the management system in place that does that, and they have that responsibility of getting these on track now?
Do you want to come back with that?
So every single finding within these reports has a management owner, a responsible owner, and it's their responsibility to ensure that it is delivered by the timescales that they outline. And then therefore our follow-up regime that we've touched on, where you mentioned about the overdue recommendations, is how we then capture. So we do throughout every month follow up to proactively get updates on recommendations and how they're progressing from management. And then once they're complete, we get the evidence to confirm that they've been completed and embedded. So we won't close something down, hence those overdue ones that we've got. They're actually made progress, but we're not comfortable they've been fully complete. And that's why we report to you, to the committee, to say, we're not comfortable these are complete, management have done this, the date's slipping, therefore that's why they are overdue. So our responsibility is to report to you as a committee independently of how management are responding to those actions. So it is management are, and then we've got our tracker that we share with management, etc., on an ongoing basis of who owns what. If there are staff changes, we will then make sure that's reassigned to the most appropriate individual.
Councillor Hoy.
So what is actually preventing these actions taking place? So we've got 4 audit recommendations overdue. What is preventing them? What's preventing the implementation of what has to happen to get these in place? And the same for the other areas. What's preventing our contract register being up to date, which I think is really vital? Is it just staff resources again, which I'm sure we always have a staffing issue, I'm aware, but if we have that and it's the problem, we need to know. Do we need more resources in those areas? We need to know, because I don't know at the moment what's preventing.
Can you come back on that, or?
Again, from my perspective, and some of the root causes that are coming through from our reporting and our engagement with management is about that prioritisation and the fact that you've got a lack of resources and priorities to pick up other elements. So those overdue recommendations, I think the latest management response on a couple of those is that they've had to prioritise other aspects and deprioritise our action. So that is management making a judgment, but therefore what has been said here is that if this committee isn't happy with that, it's then calling the relevant management to understand why. We do probe and understand, but effectively it's management's responsibility. We will continue to report it overdue and not take it off of our tracker. So you've got that completeness, because I know you might be concerned that it might drop off and then it doesn't get addressed. We won't remove it until we see that being addressed. It's up to management to do that. The contract register, I think this is about the processes that underpin it and the data quality to ensure that it is then coming through as well. So as well as resources, I think the system is slightly outdated and not fit for purpose as well.
So again, I think it's probably can be a new scrutiny committee. Take this information and bring it to there. Councillor Hoy.
Just very quickly come back. Would the chair think it's unreasonable if I asked that the 4 audit recommendations are specifically reported to the next committee and with an expectation that they will be completed?
I think they can be reported.
Always reported, and their current due dates, as per pages 193 onwards, are all dates that are coming in August and September. So those dates are what management have given us. So you would expect at the next committee meeting, which is at the beginning of September, for those to be completed. If they're not, they will be reported as overdue still, and with updates where applicable. So they won't fall off of our regime. I think it's important that management are probably here to respond to that. I am the in-between to report to you independently on it.
So, but if I just come back, only the last time I'll come back, hopefully, on this one, is that I think we're here as the audit committee. We've got things which aren't being done. I don't think it's acceptable we say, well, we'll just wait till the September meeting and they might still be there. I don't think it's acceptable they should still be there. I think we should be driving the fact that they should be completed. This is important, and I don't think we should accept that we're just going to note another report in 2 or 3 months' time, which just says they're still overdue.
Thank you. Ian. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I would suggest we need to understand who is the responsible director within the various areas that these problems are, and they are the responsible director. And so we need to actually ask them to look very seriously at these various concerns, and they should literally tell us why there are delays. If they are, how are they going to fix them? What kind of resource do they need to fix them? We need to understand everything that is the problem and let us know so we can actually understand where the areas of concern and what the solutions are. And I think that is the most simplest recommendation we can put in.
Okay. Councillor Newport, and then I think we need to move on a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I agree with Councillor Ward, but ultimately David Dickinson is responsible for audit. I think it should be down to Mr. Dickinson to come to this committee, and if he needs other officers here, then he's the one to summon them in to answer these questions, as Councillor Ward has said, because this is just ridiculous. We're just not getting any answers to the questions. Things are rolling over from year to year, and these issues aren't being addressed, and I think the auditors are actually getting a runaround by our officers.
I think that's a very good point, but we need to drill down on what questions and who we actually want. We can't have them all up here in one go, so I think we need to break it up into smaller chunks, and if we have to have more meetings, we have to have more meetings to do that, if that's what the committee wants to do. So I think we can move on with that. Yeah, biggest concerns first.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Have we got any more of these appendices you want to go through?
It may be better for me just to quickly say that the next appendix, so we were doing the medium-term financial, the next one was the main financial systems audit that got a moderate opinion, and this covered the general ledger controls, journals, core reconciliations, as well as the AP and AR systems, and we did raise 6 medium recommendations on that. So perhaps I'll just leave it at that and answer any questions on that. But again, it may be familiar themes that there might be the need for management to respond on some of them.
Is there anything new to ask questions on? Councillor Hoy.
Not anything new, but it's just going back to the recommendation which we're doing for this report. So I would hope that perhaps rather than just note this report, we should express our concerns.
I think our concerns will be noted in the minutes.
About it, and perhaps put some of the wording that Councillor Ward very succinctly put into that as recommendation as well. That perhaps David Dickens can come to the next
This
meeting.
report is for note only. What Councillor Ward and what's been muted by the committee, Councillor Newport and you, will be in the minutes, and we can go from what's been said here tonight and look at bringing officers in, the most ones that are most critical first, and see where we can go with that. Okay.
So
Last time, then we need to move on.
I accept it will be in the minutes. I just think we should not just have the report minuted as being noted. I think it should be minuted as being noted, but the committee raised concerns which are expressed within the minutes along that line.
Okay, it'll take a minute to get the language.
That's okay,
It's gonna
Chair,
come
not a
through.
problem. So I'll suggest that members note the recommendations subject to the concerns expressed at the meeting, and you can elaborate to that. If you want to put that officers attend, or you could put that in the actions or something like that, but just a little change to the wording to say that you raise concerns, but you're happy to note it.
Thanks, Claire. But also we need to pick up on the issues about accessibility as well on this report and the presentation, because I think we've all struggled with this report.
I think that's all going to be in the minutes.
Yeah.
I know it's going to be in the minutes, but it's all very well putting things in the minutes, but they don't get actioned. And this is a serious action,
Yeah.
because we're going to we keep coming back to the same thing. We're talking about the same issue over and over. It's not getting addressed.
Right,
So
okay.
it's to be taken seriously.
Let me
by
take this
officers
offline, Councillor
responsible.
Newport, because I do believe there was an action sheet that the Democratic Services officers will go through the actions that are meant to be taken at committee meetings, and then they should be signed off. So let me take that offline and I'll get back to you. Is that okay?
Right then, so we're happy to note the report using Claire's wording. You got that, Xana? Along the lines of members express concerns on noting accessibility and bringing officers in to update on what's happening, why things are not being done. Okay? Responsible officers. Okay. Right then, so that's okay to be noted with those provisos? Yes. With the provisos, yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, so I do believe that's, I move on to item 8. Yep. Right, Essex Procurement Partnership, Governance Review and Recommendations to the Council. Report begins on page 355. James will introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. I'm James Sinclair. I'm Head of Procurement, looking after the Essex Procurement Partnership. So we have been asked to come in by Brentwood and Rochford to effectively undertake procurement activity on behalf of the council. So the Essex, so what we're asking here is to for your consideration and agreement to the collaboration agreement as provided in Appendix A. The Essex procurement strategy as provided in Appendix B, the procurement procedure rules as set out in Appendix C, and the social value approach as set out in Appendix D. I should apologise that there are a couple of typos within the report that we noted. One on page 359 at 1.10, where we should be referencing 1.3 for benefits and 1.5 for deliverables. One at page 361 at paragraph 1.28, where social value approach is referenced as Appendix C and should be referenced as Appendix D. And then also at page 364 at 2.1, where it should read that we're enabling formal membership of the Essex Procurement Partnership. So apologies for those errors. I'll just quickly introduce, if I may, the Essex Procurement Partnership and then each element or each appendix. The Essex Procurement Partnership officially commenced on 1st of April 2025. And that was made up of Braintree District Council, Castle Point Borough Council, Epping Forest District Council, Essex County Council and Tendring District Council. ECC has been supporting Brentwood and Rochford as of late and providing a procurement service. The idea is what we want to do is bring Brentwood and Rochford formally into the partnership. The partnership is a 3-year trial, but effectively with LGR, that kind of supersedes that anyway. And member councils are free to exit during that period. And also it can increase and decrease according to demand. The reason that Essex Procurement Partnership was created was to increase resilience. Historically, across district and borough councils, there would be 1 or 2 people effectively undertaking procurement. If anyone was off sick or if people left, it caused real significant problems in the delivery of procurement, which had a knock-on effect to delivery of many of the objectives of the organisation. Also, things such as contractor registers, etc. There wasn't the capacity or capability to drive some of those things forward. We wanted procurement expertise, so within the Essex Procurement Partnership, we have all members of staff are either members of the Chartered Institute for Purchasing Supply or are working towards that with all senior managers members of that, and the accountable body being Essex County Council is accredited with SIPS. We want to ensure that compliance was in place, so making sure that we're in line with existing regulations. And so as part of the Essex Procurement Partnership, we have access to a strategy and assurance team who understand what is happening around the Procurement Act and the various bits that the various new additions and procurement policy notes that come out of the Procurement Act, and so we're able to keep on in line with legislation all the time. By having one approach, we can support small to medium enterprises in particular. They don't have to understand different authorities' ways of procuring multiple times. If they are doing a project for Rochford District Council, it's the same as doing a project for Brentwood District Council as Braintree District Council. The same documentation is used there. And obviously that has knock-on effects in terms of duplication, where we are able to just do those that documentation once, and that's not having to sort of go on multiple times across the authorities. We're able to retain staff through professional development. By having a broader team, it means we can have some more senior staff who are overseeing the project work, but we can build a development pathway within the team. That's both beneficial because we retain staff. We've got 100% retention since the setup, including before it was officially started. But also, it means that we can have a much more cost-effective way of delivering procurement because we have the expertise within the broader team, so we can have that to check on the work that's being done by more junior members of staff. We're able, through collaborative procurement, to deliver savings and also improve practice. I'll just finish on the note that it is a true partnership. We have representatives from officers, from senior officers, i.e. director level at Strategic Officer Group, and we also have representation from members at the Members Advisory Group. So the intention there, as I say, is to make sure that this is is collaborated and delivered jointly by all of the councils together.
Thank you, James. Councillor Ward, I think, wants to come in.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I welcome this, but that there are some things that I hope that this will cover. Having worked in a large bank, we had a large contract division in there with lawyers to understand how contracts are. And I'm aware, and I'm sure some of the Essex County councillors are aware, that some contracts were not negotiated particularly well in the past. And one of the things that I would assume, and I'm assuming this now, is that we will have really, really good legal and contractual experts who understand contracts, the depth of contracts, to ensure that we are actually getting what we want. And I think that's a very important factor. Also, I like the idea that there's going to be some consolidation. So we will be able to procure across the various members to get better prices as far as that's concerned. But the other thing that's going to be important is contracts specific to Rochford District Council that are nowhere else. And I hope that within this, we will have the best experts able to negotiate the best contracts for Rochford District Council in specific items that they wish to procure. That's a whole gamut of questions in that, if you can satisfy my curiosity.
James.
Thank you, Councillor. So a number of points there. In terms of the structure of the team, we have significant experience across that team. And access to even greater experience within the wider Essex County Council. We will link with legal representation across those councils, we seek legal advice across that. By having some consistency across the procurement process, we're able then to focus time and effort on where there needs to be specific legal input, rather than just checking through kind of each contract documentation, because we standardise that. In terms of looking at category specialisms, by having a broader team, we are able to focus on having specific expertise in specific markets. For example, if Rochford were undertaking a procurement around construction, they may not be doing that many construction projects. Across the wider Essex Procurement Partnership, including Essex County Council, we have a lot of construction projects being undertaken, so therefore there's category expertise within that, and we reach back into the authority, Essex County Council, to look specifically at that category expertise. So yes, I think by collaborating together, we're able to get both economies of scale. We can focus on where it's right to be procuring locally, and we can make sure that we have much better understanding of specific markets, because there's a broader team that's able to do that.
Thank you, James. I think if you look at the paragraph under the three dots on page 355, joining the Essex Procurement Programme, the Council will enable greater resilience to its procurement activities, increase professionalism and procurement practices, and improve efficiency through working together with the EPPM members, which I think is important. And this is to formalise this. So, Jane, Councillor Newport and Councillor Sutton. I'll come back in a second. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. So procurement scored limited on effectiveness, and if we're to join the Essex Procurement Partnership tonight, how much of that limited rating does joining the EPP actually resolve, and what's left for us to fix ourselves?
James?
Thank you, Councillor. So there's a number of things that we're working on there. So for contract register, for example, we are using spend data to go through that, identify the suppliers where they are not on the contract register, and then we are working with the service areas clearly in doing that as well, and then looking for where those contracts are, putting the detail in there, and forming part of the wider work that's going on around an all Essex contracts register through the local government reorganisation work. So there's significant work that we're looking at now, and we're putting that time in. So we've gone through that in the last 3 months to build up more and more expertise, and it's now with service areas who are putting some detail into that. Around some of the the test of contracts. So we have structure within the process that we have. So we have a TPS system, which effectively means that we have to go through certain activities before a procurement can go out the door, including a procurement strategy, which says why that procurement is being undertaken in that way and the rationale for doing that. So that picks up some of those issues there. Around contract management, at the last strategic officer group, we talked through a consistent approach to contract management. Whilst the Essex Procurement Partnership isn't doing contract management, that is done through Essex County Council, so we were able to take a modified, simplified version of some of the work there, put a tiering approach to it, so make sure we do at the right level contract management to the right contracts, and we are then looking to roll that out and issue training to staff who are doing contract management across the service areas. And in terms of contract procedure rules, it's picked up that we're introducing a new set of procurement rules. Those have been reviewed across multiple councils, so we've got legal input into those, making sure they're aligned to the Procurement Act and the National Procurement Strategy. Where there are points such as low tenders, subcontractor exclusions, debarments, etc., those are picked up in practice documents and in terms and conditions that have been thoroughly reviewed as well. So even where some of those points have been raised there, they are picked up in the procedures that go alongside the procurement rules and the templates that we've rolled out to make sure they're consistent about how we undertake procurement for the council.
Thank you. Councillor, I think it's a new point, and Councillor Hoyt, and I'll come back to Councillor Ward, and we'll move on.
Thank you, Chair. So, if as ECC hosts this EPP, if LGR does go ahead and abolishes ECC in its current form, what happens to the accountable body role and insurance ECC provides, as the report doesn't say about that? And the other thing that I've been particularly interested in as well, which I think in my time at Essex County Council I raised it a number of times with LGR, is that Rochford is in probably a unique position like Castle Point, where it would join an existing unitary. It probably has its own procurement setup. What is the impact of that with Rochford, and is there any cost attached to that for our residents?
James?
So in terms of local government reorganisation, we are looking at how that works in terms of this procurement partnership. So I am leading the system working group for procurement for the local government reorganisation, and part of that is around looking at, can we create ahead of time consistent practice, so that from day one of the new authority should come in place, that we have good consistent practice across all authorities. I think the work that we've done, so we've got this now across 7, nearly 8 authorities, the work that we've done there is a good starting point around that. The consistency across procurement strategy, procurement rules, again, that feels like a good starting point that we want to look at across LGR. Now, we can't say what will happen post LGR, clearly. We're not in a position to do that. But what we are doing for all the work, for example, including contracts registers, is about making sure that through LGR, new vesting authorities would have clear understanding of their contracts, know where those contracts are, so they're kept in a common place and they can access them from day one. And that's some of the learning that we've taken from others who have gone through LGR and through the National Advisory Group. And we're also working with Central Buying Consortium and various other national groups too. So make sure that we know where those contracts are, make sure that there's good processes in place, so we've got a starting point there, and make sure that we're kind of operating procurement effectively with good qualified personnel. Now, what that looks like post-LGR, I don't know at the moment, but I think we put in some really good foundational blocks that people can build from if they choose to.
Thank you, Councillor. Very, very quickly, 'cause I'm looking
Well,
at
I've
the
only
time.
asked one question. Just, I thought we could ask as many questions as we want.
Yeah, I want to move
What
on
you
as
said
well.
at the start.
As other people want to ask questions.
James, can I just ask another question then on, I specifically mentioned Southend, and I don't think you actually answered that question. Is Southend actually cooperating with you on this? Because I know when previously, when we've been looking at highways contract at Essex County Council, they weren't cooperating with Essex County Council on this at all, and it does create a real risk in that provision of the service. So can you specifically answer that?
James?
Thank you. So Southend are part of the working group. So we've had 5 workshops now, including all of the district boroughs, unitary authorities and Essex County Council. And we talked through all of these issues as part of that. So the All Essex Contracts Register, they've fed into that. We've had discussions around consistency of procurement practice, and we've talked through some of the sort of options around procurement structure. Now, we haven't kind of reached, well, we can't reach a conclusion, obviously, around that because we're not in a position that we can make a decision around that. But I can say that Southend Council are fully involved in that group and we are talking with them. Apologies, I didn't pick that up before. But yes, I mean, inevitably there will be differences in opinions and practice, but how we've done this with the Essex Procurement Partnership is working together and getting to a sort of a common ground there. So that's what we'd look to do as part of the LGR work streams as well.
Thank you. Councillor Hoy.
Thank you. 2 of my questions have been answered with those. Just quickly about how we're expected to measure this. We've said it's going to give benefits such as greater resilience, increased expertise and improved efficiencies, for instance. It's also got the social value part of it. How will we as members be able to measure these? What KPIs or key performance indicators are we going to receive and how often are we going to receive them? So we know that what this is intended to do is working. I think it's a 2-year trial period as well. So we can't, I think there's little point in having it after 1 year and then the second year we've got to decide it's too late. So I think this is something which needs to come back as a report quite frequently to note so that we know it's working. And also very briefly on top of that, just coming back to what we've spoken about, weaknesses in procurement and contracts management already in an earlier report. My concern is if we're not aware that ours are complete at the moment, I'm still unsure if they're complete or not complete, or if it's just a procedural matter. How do we know we're going to get the best from this system if we're not able to feed the correct information into it?
James, you want to come back on them?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of key performance indicators, we report through those governance structures that I mentioned, so the Strategic Officer Group and the Partner Working Group. So we have monthly meetings with the Partner Working Group. We have meetings every 2 months with the Strategic Officer Group and every 6 months with the Members Advisory Group. At those meetings, we present information, so all of the information from our contracts register, so we build a common pipeline and a common approach to contracts registers across all of the members of EPP. Now that's been broadened across those in the LGR group as well. We look at savings, we look at numbers of projects delivered We are now tracking the length of time it takes to deliver the projects. So there's effectively 7 stages of the projects. So we're tracking how long it takes against those projects, and within each stage of those, then we're able to interrogate that and say, okay, it's stopped at this point. Why is it stopped at this point? So we can start to understand the whys, not just kind of what's happening. And social value, the themes and outcome measures, kind of the purpose of that is it delivers a real value out of it. So we're able to say, for example, I think we're at, and don't quote me exactly on these figures, but we're at about 4.5 million committed of social value across those themes and outcome measures across the existing members of the Essex Procurement Partnership, and we're delivering at about 3.7 million of social value, and we're chasing the others. So we're able to see a real financial impact as well as case studies for the social value, and we're able to see savings that are being delivered across EPP, and we're able to see the efficiencies from the ways that we're working through having multiple, by having reporting through a Power BI system.
Thank you. Come back, yeah.
So they will be available to our meetings, that's good. Can I just ask if we've got a base level for social value so we can see if it's improved what we do on that?
We don't, not for Rochford, sorry. We ask social value because it's legally required to ask it within tender documents, but we haven't introduced, because we need to get it approved, the themes and outcome measures approach to social value. So whilst we have some sort of indicative ideas of what social value have happened, the point of introducing this is to make it measurable and to be able to compare how we are performing against others nationally, but more specifically those within Essex as well.
Just to be clear then, we're benchmarking against national values and similar councils as well?
So we did a benchmarking exercise for the procurement service across nationally, so we can see how we're performing against certain things. For example, engagement with small to medium enterprises, engagement with members, some of the reporting, some of the procurement practice. In terms of social value, yes, we look across those other members of the Essex Procurement Partnership. We're yet to do the benchmarking because we've not introduced it long to do benchmarking across national, but that is something that we're looking at how we can do that, because part of the purpose of this is to be able to have some kind of consistency across it.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions, please. First is picking up a comment you just made about the member advisory group. Could we just have a bit more information about that, please? Will Rochford District Council have a seat on that, or is it only Essex County Council? A bit more information about that and its frequency, please. And also, just notice in the report, recommendations R1, R2, R4. The recommendations about this are to note that we enter into this agreement rather than actually having a
I
decision.
think recommendation 1 is to note, the rest are to agree.
No, recommendation 2 is to note as well. And endorse. So we're not actually being asked to make a decision here on something that's quite important. And I note, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, this has not come to previous council meetings, has it?
No,
this is the first time we've had sort of quite an important change to Rochford District Council.
I think you might have misread that, Councillor Webb. It says members' recommendations 2, 3, 4 and 5 require a vote. It's just 1 that's to note.
The recommendation in front of me, Chair, says that Audit, Governance and Standards Committee notes the proposed entry of Rochford District Council. So we're just being asked to note this, not make a decision, which I find slightly concerning. It feels like the officers have had this discussion beforehand, and this is the first time we've had a chance to look into it, and it's quite a significant change of direction, I feel.
Okay, so James, answer these.
I can certainly answer a question around the members' advisory group. So that makes every 6 months. Yes, Rochford would have a member sitting on the members' advisory group. Some of the activity that is monitored, so we monitor against how the Essex Procurement Partnership is performing. We advise kind of where, how we're delivering against the national procurement strategy, how we're delivering against the requirements of the collaboration agreement as set out, and against our own procurement strategy. So we are effectively undertaking a kind of discussion around that, but then we also want to make sure we get the input and expertise from members into how we can develop the Essex Procurement Partnership going forward around improving the offer that we have. Particularly, I think, when you some of the expertise around supporting small to medium enterprises, for example, how we can engage better with those markets. So we do try and make it a two-way conversation. In terms of the bits of note, I have to say, I'm afraid I'm not the best person to answer that.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton, we get back to the noting bits.
Thank you. The spending threshold. The proposal raises the level at which the purchase can skip full competition. Is it from 50,000 to 100,000? And I understand it's presented as efficiency, and I understand the logic. But my concern kind of goes the other way. So doesn't less competition mean higher prices, not lower ones? What specific safeguards protect the value for money on contracts up to 100,000 that will no longer go through a full tender?
James?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So absolutely, this is something that we sort of debated ourselves when we were looking around this. So the 100,000 is for the life of the contract. So a typical 4-year contract, that would be 25,000 a year. We have spoken to small businesses as part of the engagement sessions we've had. Some of the biggest issues that they have is around undertaking tenders. So what we wanted to do was make it as simple as possible for them to be able to work with the council. Now, the quotations doesn't mean no competition, and we don't have to just do 3 quotations, go to multiple quotations. And if we feel it's beneficial to go out and do a tender exercise, then of course we can do that as well. That doesn't stop us doing it. What it does do, hopefully, is it simplifies it for businesses, particularly those small businesses who don't have professional bid teams. We can focus it around some local supply, so we can consider who we should be engaging with, inviting to the request for quote process. And we can engage so one of the things that we're doing at the moment, which will be taking place over the autumn months, is doing some small to medium enterprise engagement events. We can talk them through the process of how that works, and also bring back information on which suppliers are doing what, and look at how we can engage more fully with them. So yes, it's not open fully, and we weighed that against the kind of benefits really of making a much simpler process that small businesses particularly were much easier, much more able to engage with fully. That said, we are also looking at the tender process to look at how we can simplify that as much as possible within the regulations.
Thank you, James. Right, getting to the recommendation is to note. Recommendation 2 is the important one. We are recommended to be approved, this to be approved by full council. So, as you said, it's an important, very important subject, so it's still got to be approved by full council. So that's why we vote on the recommendation 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then to change the constitution as well. So, members, I think we've had a really good debate on this. So I would like to move forward on this. So, members, recommendation 1 is to note. Is that noted, members? Noted. Members, recommendation 2, 3, 4 and 5. Are we okay to take them on block? Yes? Okay. So those in favour of recommendations 2... Second, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ward. And so those in favour of recommendation 2, 3, 4 and 5, please indicate. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think there's any abstentions. Anybody's voted? Any abstentions? No. So that's carried. Carried 7, 4, and 5 against. So that is approved. Thank you, members. Right, item 9. Report begins on page 481, and Sam will introduce this item. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the Council's annual review of Treasury management activity for 25-26 and demonstrates how the Council has managed its cash, investments and capital financing arrangement throughout the year. In line with our capital strategy, capital expenditure was only financed through a combination of grants, capital receipts, reserves and internal resources. Investment performance was particularly strong, generating income of 1.273 million against a budget of 864,000, which delivered an additional 409,000 of income for the Council. At year end, the Council held investments of 23 million, which was entirely invested with UK local authority counterparts in line with our priority of security, liquidity and yield. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions, members? Councillor Hoyer. Councillor Ward. We have Councillor Hoyer after.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's reference page 483. We noticed that a lot of the items, as I mentioned, are running out. What are we doing with regard to fixing new items to invest the money in? Thank you.
So yes, I can give an update on that. So the one that's matured by Murray, that fund has been reinvested with Adura District Council at a rate of 4.05%, and that has been, the maturity date on that is not till June 2028. We've got East Dunbartonshire that's matured today, and Highland Council that's maturing on the 29th of July, and they're being reinvested on the 29th of July with Cambridge County Council at the same rate, but the maturity is in July 2028.
Thank you. Councillor Hoyer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not trying to work out how to word the question, really, but it's really about something I've mentioned earlier as well, but it was also within this report, which is around the fact we've had good investment returns, and we've avoided external borrowing by using our own cash. So we've borrowed it internally, which I know is that's another financial how we do that is different. But those cash balances reflect the fact that we haven't actually completed our capital programs, as we've said. And I think what I'm trying to put here is how will that be regarded? How well protected are those capital projects if LGR happens? We've got big cash balances, which might be quite attractive in a new authority, but to our mind, they're allocated against underinvestment in previous years in our properties and capital investments. So how would a successor authority review those cash balances in relation to our underspend on capital expenditure?
Go on, Sam.
You're right to point out Rochford are in a strong position, and we're trying to, obviously officers are trying to deliver on a capital programme. In terms of them securing them in terms of LGR, that will be worked through in the process of that. But I mean, the intention in terms of the mid-financial strategy is to obviously deliver on that capital programme, which would then in turn reduce those reduce those cash balances before then.
Want to come back or? No. Okay. Any other questions, members? No. Okay, right then. So I'll now move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Newport.
Yeah. Sam, so just looking at those investments, and particularly the Kingston upon Hull City Council with the maturity of 27, So, is there an option to basically get that money back sooner, given the fact that, or potential that later in the year we'll be restricted on spending, and if there's a change in priorities within the council, I mean, the liquidity of those investments. I mean, is it possible to? I mean, what's that? 5 million in there. So, sorry, I know it's theoretical, but I just wanted to understand that.
We wouldn't be able to get it back without significant penalties. No, but I mean, in terms of our cash flow, as we modelled, that we wouldn't require that 5 million until the 20th of September 2027.
Okay, so I'll move on to the recommendations. Right, members, I will now move a motion that the recommendation 1 on page 481 be approved. Cover the seconder, please. Councillor Ward. We will now vote on recommendation 1. Recommendation 1, that the Audit and Governance and Standard Committee reviews and agrees the Treasury Annual Report 25/26 and recommends it to Council to approval on the 15th of September 2026. That's the correct date. One hasn't moved. All those in favour, please. I've got a feeling that is unanimous. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Right, item 10. Establishment of a Constitution Working Group. The report begins on page 487. The Monitoring Officer will introduce this item.
Deputy Monitor Officer tonight. Thank you, members. I've got nothing else to add, but happy to take any questions. As you can see in the report, the makeup of the Constitution Working Group will be 6 members. That'll be 1 each from all political groups, and they don't need to be nominated tonight. They can be through your group leaders to the Monitoring Officer, Paula Derry.
Councillor Newport and Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Yeah, just a question on procedure, really. Why are we establishing a Constitution Working Group when we already have a Constitution Working Group? I just don't understand why we need to...
Probably because the makeup of the council was changed.
Well, we could just amend the current working group to increase to another member. I can't understand.
That's okay, Councillor Newport. Yeah, a report comes to the first Audit, Governance and Standards Committee every year. Obviously, if you want to keep the same membership, but obviously other groups have now come to the council, so every year we will look at it and review it. But if you want to keep the same membership and nominate the same member, you're more than welcome to.
Councillor Sutton.
This might just be because we're newbies. But can you explain to me how it's a working group that isn't open to the public? So what's the recommendations and rationale? How are they going to be reported back? Any changes? How are they going to be transparent even though the working group meets in private?
Okay, so yes, working groups are not open to the public. Obviously, they are entitled to look at the minutes if the public wish to do so, but you are discussing items to be changed in the Constitution. You're not making any decisions. You're putting recommendations forward that will either go to this committee, then go on to full council, or go straight to full council. Okay.
Any other questions, members? No. Okay, then. Right then, I'll now move a motion that the recommendation on page 487 be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Oh, I think Councillor Booth beat you there. Yeah, you did. Right. We'll now vote on the recommendation that the committee appoints a Constitution Working Group of 6 members, 1 from each political group, as set out in the report. All those in favour? I do believe that is unanimous. Thank you, members. That is unanimous. That is passed. Right, members, item 11. Local Code of Corporate Governance and Annual Governance Statement. Report begins on page 491. Claire?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, nothing to add, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions, members? Yes, Councillor Hoy.
Sorry, thank you. I didn't ask a question on the previous item, did I? I've got two. I might only ask one. About local government reorganisation. So it identifies this as one of the key governance risks in the report. How will we, as the committee, receive assurances over the next 12 months that these risks are being actively managed rather than just recorded? I think that's one of the concerns I have about a lot of the reports. We get key performance indicators, but we never get assurances about how they're actually managed, and I'm really keen on how we manage those risks. Thank you. And I've got another question around the Constitution, which is very straightforward. But
I can take them. I can take them. Yeah, do you want to do them both together? That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. It's fairly straightforward. It's just obviously the Constitution is very important to the council. I'm trying to find the wording, to be careful about this wording, because I don't want it to come across I'm criticising anybody, and I'm not. It's just an understanding. So how can members have assurance that the Constitution is being applied consistently across all decision making, and what is in place where we can see that is happening? How do we know that's happening? Is that through the monitoring officer? Is there a report that we get which says about decisions being applied and how the questions are raised?
Are you talking about officer decisions, Councillor Hoy? Are you talking about officer decisions or just decisions that are made at every single council meeting?
No, it's just
interpreting the.
For instance, at full council, we had motions on which are already on the papers and we have said that they don't need to be seconded. But tonight, Councillor FD has had to have a seconder for his motions, which are also on the papers. So, is there a difference between a full council meeting and this meeting? Some have to be seconded, some not? I think it's about consistency. I'm a bit concerned about. Yeah. So we then understand what's happening.
So, all motions should need to be moved and seconded. Okay, all motions should be moved and seconded because you've got the right to reserve your right to speak.
And you can't discuss them until they've been seconded. Either.
You can't discuss until they've been seconded.
I think
but
maybe
motions were not seconded, which were already on the paper on Tuesday. So is there a difference between what's on the order paper?
I wasn't there at that meeting. I'll have to take that offline with them.
Can you take that away then, please?
I will.
This is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There's inconsistencies sometimes, and they might be
consistency in the procedure.
Not
rules.
inconsistency.
Is that what you're
saying?
saying?
How you treat things differently, but I've been a councillor for 16 years now, and I'm still not quite sure how some things are different in different committees.
Was that both questions? What was the first one again? What was the first one? So I think that was more the second question we answered, wasn't it? Oh, the risks.
Yeah. Okay, yes. Sorry, yeah. On all the risks in the ADS, they will be reported back probably at Christmas time on how we are progressing with them all. You've got 14 risks that have been highlighted in there. Obviously, some of them you've actually mentioned tonight regarding cyber and things like that. So we will report back. I will come back, end of the year.
Nice Christmas report for us all. Councillor Hoy.
I think Christmas might be quite late in the day, considering that Councillor Newport's already mentioned there could be spending restrictions being brought in the autumn. I think that's a risk we need to understand and what that might prevent this council from doing.
Okay, let me speak to Mr. Dickinson about probably coming back in the autumn, maybe quarterly. Okay.
Any more questions, members? Oh, Councillor Ince and Councillor Hughes.
Sorry, it's not a question, more of a request. My colleagues are freezing. Can we turn the AC off?
Yeah. Oh, it talks on, it comes back. Right, members. Right, I will now move a motion that the recommendation 1 and 2 on page 491 be approved. I have a seconder, please? I'll give it to Councillor Webb. Right, we will now vote on the recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the annual governance statement 2025-2026 attached in Appendix A is approved and signed by the Chief Executive and Leader of the Council. And recommendation 2, that the committee approves and adopts the local code of corporate governance set out in Appendix B. Do you want to take those en bloc, or should we do them separately? En bloc. Right, for those in favour, please, members. Seems to be unanimous. Thank you, members. And item 12, the committee work programme. So anybody have anything to add to the committee work programme? You took a note earlier, Roxana, to add. It's been a long meeting, I can't remember what it was now. No, you actually took a note. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wondering if LGR needs to be included on this work programme, as it's been mentioned so many times this evening. Thank you.
I'm sure we can include it, but I'm sure it will be answered in a lot of other work programmes as well in this council going forward. Okay. That seems to conclude the evening's meeting. 8:45. Thank you, members, for coming. Can I just put a note? There was mandatory training this evening. The members who never took it up, they're going to do a mop-up session, so please attend mandatory training. Thank you.
Sorry, Sharon, did you say that was mandatory?
I have been informed it is mandatory.
Yeah. Can I again request that training done through other organisations, including Essex County Council, other councils and the LGA, can be taken account of in our training record?
I will make sure that's in the minutes again, please. Have you ever finished, Chair?